The most famous sculptures of Camille Claudel. In this video, we will see the most famous works of Camille, the most famous symbolist sculptor in the entire history of art. Claudel's Great Wave. Sculpture by Camille Claudel from the year 1897. The underappreciated Camille Claudel is inspired by Hokusai's The Great Wave for this marvelous little sculptural ensemble of three bathers holding hands who crouch before a wave that comes upon them. The influence of Japanese engraving is evident in the history of modern art. Impressionism drank directly from these charming Oriental drawings, and Claudel, who was part of the art scene at the time, also wanted to pay homage to this exotic and attractive technique. In the sculpture, we can verify the virtuosity of the artist. A perfect carving on a material that is difficult to sculpt, which Claudel endows with movement, life and emotion. Perhaps Claudel's wave symbolizes what the artist was experiencing in those years, a stormy relationship with Auguste Rodin, her mentor, lover and constant source of pain. 15 years in which it is rumored that the author stole ideas, cuckolded and even forced an abortion on Claudel, who was still deeply in love. Unfortunately, the sculptor would end her days in a psychiatric hospital, diagnosed with a systematic persecution mania, delusions of grandeur and believing herself to be the victim of the criminal attacks of a famous sculptor. The sculptress, like so many other women artists, anonymous or not, was unable to get the recognition she deserved in life. From here we give it to you with reverence and admiration. Vertumnus and Pomona. Sculpture by Camille Claudel from the year 1905. Claudel, always in the shadow of Rodin, his mentor, lover and thief of ideas. But no one in the entire 19th century achieved such a degree of delicacy and exquisiteness. Even less in marble, as in this example. With Impressionism already established, Claudel plays with light, textures and composition to represent two lovers. Initially anonymous, many saw the representation of the nymph Sakuntala from Hindu mythology, but in 1905 it became known that it was actually Vertumnus and Pomona, two lovers of Roman mythology. Vertumnus was a god who personified the notion of change, of mutation, of the passage from one season of the year to another. He was credited with the gift of transforming himself into all the forms or things he wanted, and that becomes the perfect metaphor for sculpture. Pomona, his beloved, was the divinity of fruit. Everyone wanted to sleep with her, but only Vertumnus had that luck. The god, disguised as an old woman, went to congratulate her on the fruits of her trees and hugged her with a good heart, and when he took off his disguise, Pomona fell in love. That is what Claudel shows us, who in those years was in the midst of an emotional crisis, due to his heartbreak with Rodin. Clotho. Sculpture by Camille Claudel from the year 1893. As is well known, Camille Claudel's was not an easy story. She was born a woman and wanted to be a sculptor at a time when art was only for men. And furthermore, she fell in love with her teacher, the great Auguste Rodin, who took advantage of her talent and her work, a tragic and painful love story. But above all, Camille was a tenacious woman and above all an exceptional artist. He proposed new forms of expression for sculpture, innovated movement, broke with the Academy and revolutionized the art of sculpting. An example of his mastery is Clotho, a sculpture in which the artist definitively separates herself from the influence of Rodin and unfolds her full expressive potential. In this work, Camille reflects her deep inquiries and her concern to manifest them in her work. And it is that Camille Claudel was always interested in human passions, the transcendental of existence and the meaning of life. He was concerned with the subject of destiny and the inability of the human being to control it. Insisting on issues such as old age, innocence, pain or abandonment, his work addresses universal issues such as love, loneliness or the stages of life. In mythology, Clotho was one of the daughters of Zeus, the youngest sister of the three fates, who are the deities who decide the fate of men. The work is interpreted as a personification of destiny. We are faced with a tremendous and heartbreaking sculpture that exudes torment, sadness, and loneliness. It is a work that is moving due to the expressive plasticity of its forms. The pathetic figure is trapped in its own web, dominated by fate. Wrapped in a powerful formal language, Clotho has an aura of feeling and depth. The treatment that the artist makes of the skin and the anatomy become bearers of a carnal message as well as a spiritual one. In Clotho's figurative conception, one can also appreciate the capacity that the artist had reached in the realistic study of her characters and the deep knowledge of anatomy and the human body that Camille possessed, the result of a conscientious study of forms and years of work. Experts in the work of Camille Claudel suggest that Clotho's hair can be seen as a symbol of the complexity of the tangle of destiny that wraps everything with its threads. The figure ineluctably obeys a force that dominates it with its weight. With this work, Camille Claudel's language begins to be hers alone, her voice, her poetry. Each element has been thought and chosen by the artist within a sculptural perspective. Through a laborious and very careful process, her exquisite technical ability allowed her to break away from academicism to endow her figures with expressiveness and emotion. Clotho is an outstanding example of his technical bravery. Unfairly remembered as Rodin's lover rather than as a fundamental artist for the configuration of modernity, a mainstay of expressionism in sculpture, Camille Claudel was a revolutionary artist in a revolutionary time. He decided to dedicate his life to an art that required enormous physical effort, a dirty trade that required strength, dexterity, and vitality. Her contemporaries and even Rodin himself considered her a man, due to her creative force and her intellectual verve. At that time, the talented female artist was considered a rarity, a distortion towards the masculine. A woman who executed quality art was a woman who created like a man. Intelligent and cultured, Camille imposed a new way of understanding art made by women. A slow and stormy change of female incorporation into the world of artistic creation. The monumentality of his work Clotho, moving and powerful, allows us to understand the great contributions that Camille Claudel made to the sculpture of his time, positioning himself as a fundamental figure in the evolution of sculptural art at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th centuries. It's hard to escape the poignant expressiveness, energetic vitality, and brutal beauty of this utterly original work. The Mature Age. Sculpture by Camille Claudel from the year 1899. In the bowels of the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, an imploring desperation subtly breathes. That eternal plea is The Mature Age, a bronze sculptural ensemble molded in plaster and tears by Camille Claudel. He molded a manly figure, a loved body with his outstretched arm, delaying the imminent departure, Rodin's body. At his feet, a feminine and delicate body, full of life, but waste of passion with arms raised, trying to stop the march. It is a work by Camille, a premonitory self-portrait of her oblivion and abandonment in a sanatorium for 30 years. The last figure remains threatening, semi-hidden. It is that of an old woman furrowed with wrinkles, Rose Buret, wife of Rodin. Its jaws like stalking pincers mark the surrender of the flesh over time, arms and a flaccid, decadent face. The old woman sees a thin, decrepit, withered body, an invitation to death. She grabs the figure of a man. Rose, the cruel winner. Camille Claudel, a precocious artist who at the age of 19 entered Auguste Rodin's studio in Paris as a model and student. He soon collaborated in works of the magnitude of El Pensador for the tympanum of La Puerta del Infierno, among other works. He maintains a 15-year idyll with his teacher, which degenerates into obsessive crises due to jealousy. The Mature Age is a melting pot of sentiment and symbolism reminiscent of Sandro Botticelli's Noli Me Tangere, in which Mary Magdalene kneels before Jesus adoringly implores him to touch the Master. The Mature Age, 3 ages, 3 ways of feeling. A feeling that goes beyond the skin, the being. The imploring one, a sacrifice for love, the horror of abandonment, and the surrender of a will. The Leaning Man Sculpture by Camille Claudel from the year 1886. Camille Claudel is a tragic example of what it means to be born at the wrong time. The fin de siècle society of France, closed and misogynistic, did not look favorably on a woman sculptor. This was simply a deviation. In 1886, Camille sculpted the Home Pench, a work of great plasticity where not only reflected her great mastery of anatomy and sculptural technique, but also dazzled by its plastic beauty and expressiveness. The emotion that the work gives off is moving. With the use of contortion and forced posture, Camille Claudel managed to convey in a single character what few artists of the moment, the strength of the body and the sensitivity of emotional fragility. Let's think that the exercise of sculpture supposed an enormous physical effort. It was a dirty job, which required dexterity and vitality, all attributes of masculinity. It was for this reason that tragedy, social pressure and betrayal marked Camille Claudel, to the point of generating serious nervous breakdowns that worsened day by day. One afternoon, with an order from the Claudel family itself, some nurses break into her workshop to take her against her will to the psychiatric center where she will remain locked up for the rest of her days. At that time, the worst psychiatric practices were practiced in France. Camille Claudel could not be right in defending that she was a great sculptor and that she had been neglected. Her talent and skill were not normal for a woman of her time, and therefore her diagnosis was systematic persecution mania accompanied by delusions of grandeur. Lucid and desperate, Camille wrote numerous letters, asking to be removed from there. But despite her heartbreaking complaints and the opinion of the doctors who over time began to consider it unnecessary to keep her locked up, the Claudel family never acceded to their pleas. Camille was never able to sculpt again. Between 1940 and 1945, the public psychiatric centers, dependent on the collaborationist Vichy government under the command of Marshal Pétain, left some 45,000 people to die of hunger. Camille Claudel was one of these victims. That was all for today's video. Tell us what you thought, and if you liked it, please give us your subscription and your like. This way you support the art community on YouTube. Until the next video, have a nice day.